Distinguished dignitaries, honorable guests, speakers, and participants of Global Edu-Conclave 2021. Today we are virtually connected to this conclave. There is no need of elaborating the reasons for the present situation. COVID pandemic and lack of directivity are haunting the entire world. I would prefer to say that manhood forgot to find the right place to position the science and technology and its fallouts. The new order derived after the COVID-19 pandemic is certainly a warning bell for us. Now, online meeting will become a norm for all. The experience from online will enhance. Corporates will start sharing of office. Redefinition of our communities will take place. Social gathering or places of social gathering will remain insignificant. For a very long time, things will not return to normal. Transforming our world, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, a plan of action for people, planet and prosperity, has to be viewed from this perspective. The agenda talks about people, planet, prosperity, peace and partnership, end poverty and hunger, ensure that all human beings can fulfill their potential in dignity and equality and in a healthy environment, protect the planet, sustainably manage its natural resources, take urgent action on climate change, ensure economic, social and technological progress in harmony with nature are the main objectives of framing this agenda. The agenda has rightly analyzed and brought out how our world is. Billions of our citizens continue to live in poverty. There are rising inequalities within and among countries. There are disparities of opportunities, wealth and power. Gender inequality remains a key challenge. Unemployment is a major concern. Global health threat, frequent and intense natural disasters, terrorism and related humanitarian crisis, and forced displacement of people threaten to reverse much of the development progress made in recent decades. Natural resource depletion and adverse effects of environmental degradation, including desertification, drought, land degradation, freshwater scarcity, and loss of biodiversity add to the list of challenges which humanity faces. Climate change is one of the greatest challenges of our time, and its adverse effects undermine the ability of all countries to achieve sustainable development. Increases in global temperature, sea level rise, ocean acidification, and other climate changes are seriously affecting coastal areas and low-lying coastal countries, including many least developed countries and small island developing states. The survival of many societies and of biological support systems of the planet is at risk. However, it is also a time of immense opportunity. Significant progress has been made in meeting many development challenges. Within the past generation, hundreds of millions of people have emerged from extreme poverty. Access to education has increased for both boys and girls. The spread of information and communications and its technology and global interconnectivity has great potential to speed up human progress, to bridge the digital divide and to develop knowledge societies. Based on these, 17 Sustainable Development Goals are developed. I am not attempting to read out all the SDGs, but But I will try to show and put forward a new order for future to achieve these SDGs from a literature and a technocrat perspective. True it is, from the pages of history, every trivial change in the world will find its replication in literature. Recall postmodernism in the second half of the 20th century. The World War II brought a new thought about humanity, along with a deep sense of pessimism. This marked postmodernism, when some tried to break away from the ideals of modernism. But the conflict continued within postmodernism, and it also weakened as an intellectual and cultural system. Various possibilities have been put forward after postmodernism: new materialism, post-humanism, digital modernism, meta-modernism, performatism, etc., etc. However, postmodernism era, characterized by dualist notions, ended and a new era with monist thought began. Philosophers around the world call it as metamodernism. Metamodernism questioned the universality and truthfulness of old modernism and the fragmentation and the skepticism of postmodernism. Metamodernism tried to recreate a sense of wholeness that allows positive change both locally and globally, characterized by an oscillation between aspects of both modernism and postmodernism. Going ahead with the COVID pandemic smash, which reformed the borders and revalidated the oneness of human race, we should foresee that it is the time to go beyond meta-postmodernism. Discrimination over languages, countries, race, creed, color, or gender has to diminish, and borders in all segments of life have to be redefined. Literatures and literators have greater role in molding a new intellectual and cultural environment for facilitating the agenda envisaged in 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Yes, a beyond meta-modernistic period is developing. I proposed in my book, this era is heroism. Recalling the foreword of the book Redefining Literature, famous writer and poet from California, Mr. Jack Full, wrote, and I quote, "From time to time, we need to be reminded that poet's adventures in the labyrinthine fields of language represent something that is good for you, not merely entertaining or interesting or even imaginative, but good for you, even healing." Shelley famously asserted in his defense of poetry that poets were the unacknowledged legislators of the world. I unquote. I will now take your attention to another concept, natural order. There is an order in the constitution of matter and operations of forces in nature and society. All knowledge assimilated and integrated into the present, the philosophies and sciences, the mechanization established are the consequence of the order always established and are inclined to establish it whenever it is sabotaged. A circle is phenomenal and has an irrefutable correspondence between nature and one's life. Man originates his life from nowhere and ends up in nowhere. We are ignorant of before and after life. It is still a mystery, though many elucidations exist from diverse perspectives. These interpretations are only assumptions and expectations. An individual is in darkness until he is born, and he ceases to be in light at the moment he is dead. See, from black to black, a life draws a full circle. Time immemorial, we believed that sun rises in the east and the sun sets in the west. But science proved otherwise. The sun is stationary and we humans revolve with the globe to seek the sun with definite intervals. The belief we held for years that the sun rises from the sea and returns to the sea substantiates the notion that completing a full circle is the natural order of the world. Even after the revolution of science, we learned that our revolution starts from one point and reaches the same point after an interval, which reassures us that completing the full circle is the natural order. Therefore, for everything in this world, there is a beginning. The end is the point of the beginning, which we always forget. In literature too, it is the same. We define literature as writings in prose or poetry that attempt to provide entertainment, enlightenment, or instruction to reader, listener, or observer. One cannot date the creation of first piece of literature in this universe. Excavations and findings reveal it is logical to assume that human had the instinct to poetry, storytelling, painting, and sculpture from the very beginning. It is natural to assume that forms of expressions were very raw, which reflected their innocence and which never had a barrier of any sort, including language. This is an important phase in human history. I will assert there was a zero language. Language must have developed from people imitating the sounds of nature, or from the automatic vocal responses to pain, fear, surprise, or any emotions, or from some mystical resonance or harmony connected with things in the world, or with the rhythmic chants and grunts people use to coordinate their physical actions when they work together, or which came from the use of tongue and mouth gestures to mimic manual gestures, or from sounds of inspired playfulness, love, poetry, sensibility, and song. Language must have been used for the expression of poetry or prose, with no form or ideology or any theoretical background. Zero language and theory existed, which reflected the natural response of human beings. But with civilizations and rollover, literature assumed many forms and many literary movements developed. Literary movements divided literature into categories of similar philosophical, topical, or aesthetic features. They provide language for comparing and discussing literary works. However, coming back to the present world, metamodernism recognizes oscillations to be the natural order of the world. Science confirms that oscillation takes place since there is an excitation energy triggering the particle under consideration. And the particle under oscillation will possess the characteristics of the energy it received from its oscillation, received for its oscillations. The consequence is that it may lead to a stable, unstable, or marginally stable system. Retrospectively, one can conclude that our world is not stable at the moment. That is the key to development. Why our world is not stable? The answer is twofold. One, we lost the innocence and rawness possessed by the first human pack. Second, our world is unstable. Why is it unstable? Because of the oscillations. Why do these oscillations do not become stable? The answer is the triggering excitation signal which we provide for a system is the culprit for creating unstable oscillations. Eliminating or stabilizing the unstable and marginally stable system has become the need of the hour. The time has come for literatures, artists, and intellects to redefine the world. Literature and arts are the reflection of thought or the urge for human togetherness. These inspire our inner self, or these must inspire the literatures, artists, and intellects. The thought of human togetherness will reject discrimination over whatever languages, countries, race, creed, color, or gender. During the initial phase of humanity, there was no discrimination. A need for borders to wither away from the human mind will develop. This reflection is to be the excitation energy to trigger the oscillations or change which result in a stable system. The outcome of this reflection will be the natural expression of the feelings and ideas with no coloring or distortion. This will resemble the period of zero language, which reflected the natural responses of a human being. Upon the achievement of these natural responses, a circle is completed and a stable system will arise. Therefore, in the coming days, all shall liberate from all types of inertia and transcend all the boundaries that have been set forth. A poetic leadership must evolve across the globe, which will change the order of the universe. The poetic leadership shall overturn dictatorship and autocratic rule, be it by an individual or collective, in all segments of life, family, institutions, and nations. The instability caused now is because of the greed of certain section of people or groups. The greed is not for power. It is not for money, not for any self-fulfillment needs. The reason to live is a major inner conflict posing every human being who already gained basic and psychological needs. The theory of management and the very basics of defining a manager as to get things done has gone wrong here. If this was not the case, one person or a single group would never have a complete control and decision-making capability in the domains of digitalization and communication, healthcare and allied researchers, big asset companies, which causes climate changes, intellectual property right policies, and world organizations policies. An excellent administrator of political leadership can and must reanalyze short-term plans and unnoticed setbacks in the time of crisis and should be able to expect future dangers. Nature itself has provided predators for all creatures in this world. An open-ended scientific discussion is to be evolved in each country to tackle crises and predicted catastrophes. Development and luxuries led to the domination of wealth in certain quarters, leaving others vulnerable. In this context, to come out of the present chaos, we have to recreate the nature which existed at the beginning. If this change happens across the globe and release of the control from the individuals or groups is fulfilled, we can achieve these sustainable development goals easily. Otherwise, I will conclude what will happen to the action plan taken for meeting these goals with an example. An undisputable major stakeholder in the global health domain who donated for global health programs and become the voice in the discussion for reducing prices for medicines related to AIDS and other diseases in poor countries exist in this world. On some occasions, they did the part of a broker or a negotiator with poor countries and pharmaceutical companies. These organizations had financial interest and investments in almost all major pharmaceutical companies. The intention of the organization came under cloud when they advocated for implementing intellectual property rights in poor nations. These poor nations have to seize patents to produce certain generic drugs required for their citizens. Interestingly, the intellectual property right is important to internet and computer business as well as pharmaceutical business. Commission on Macroeconomics and Health in their report made a powerful defense for protection of intellectual property rights. Ironically, the organization under Cloud was the major sponsor of the commission. In this context, zeroism and its practice through poetic leadership becomes important in implementing the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Thank you all. Let us move forward towards redefining the world and achieve the 2030 Agenda and all sustainable development goals. Thank you once again.